welcome. I am Christina Broderick. I am the CEO and founder of Ignite EDU, where it is our vision that every student can learn, build, and strengthen their mental health along their education journey. And we're doing this series focusing on student mental health in different areas in their lives. And this one in particular is about student mental health as it relates to boys and men. I've recognized over the past years of my work that most of the people that I work with are women and girls, right? I'm like, hey, let's go to this workshop. Boys are like, nah. Hey, sign up for this thing, wellness. Nah, right? But it's so important, right? Because I think there's a space that is needed for boys and their mental health. So I'm excited that you're here today. So go ahead and give us an introduction about who you are, what you do, before we dive in.
My name is RB Alverna. I am a native of Maplewood, New Jersey, right? Graduated from high school there. Kind of found out who I was in that town. Went off to college at University of Maryland, College Park. Did a year there, couldn't afford to stay. Came back to Jersey, finished up at Kane University, got my master's, my undergraduate and my master's from there. Currently just completed my coursework and my doctoral for educational leadership at Caldwell University. But I think the most important thing is the Academy, 365, right? And the work in which we do with that, which is the nonprofit that I founded in 2019, that focuses on black boys and leveling out the playing field, making sure that they get everything they deserve, everything they need to be successful as their white counterparts, leveling out the playing field, right? And that's what I felt was important, because I know growing up there's certain things I didn't get. My parents are foreigners of Haiti, right? So when they came to America, they only knew one thing, was to make sure that the land of possibilities, right? And making sure that they got the resources that they needed to make sure we had the good life. But there was a lot of things that were left off the table that kind of caused issues later on. And as a 35-year-old man now, right, who's been in therapy since 2019 and understands some of the things that's taking place. So I wanted to make sure I did everything in my power that the next generation didn't go through those issues.
Great. And you're kind of touching on it, so I want to dig a little bit deeper. So talk to us about your upbringing as it relates to mental health, right? I'm also from immigrant background, but I recognize I also do have a different experience based on what my family went through with mental health. So what was it like for you in particular, but also being a man, being a boy growing up, what was that space like for you?
The words mental health never existed in our household, right? And I don't think there was any type of behavior that you could have ever said was relatable to it. But there were things that took place that I now know caused a lot of issues.
Give an example.
So there are things that my parents would say to us, right? And it's me. I'm the middle child of 5 kids, right?
Oh, wow.
And so it's my 2 older sisters and my 2 younger brothers. And, typical kids get in trouble, do stuff. And instead of our parents trying to figure out ways to grab our attention and have us understand why the things that we're doing aren't right, it was more ridicule, right? Constant ridicule. I got the most beatings, probably the most any child that I ever felt, right? I felt like I got more beatings than anybody. But I was also one of those kids who liked to explore, right? And the things that my parents would say to me were so bad, right? But they still loved me, right? They still loved me. They just wanted me to be this person that I eventually became, but it wasn't on their time, right? So the words that you use in your household plays a huge role in the development, especially of black boys. When you are constantly telling your child that they're not going to amount to nothing, that they seem not to be valued in the house. They're just there. They're just a placeholder. Stuff like that plays a huge role, and that's how I felt growing up. I felt like I just had to be there because I was born into this family.
Right.
But where I had friends who never went through anything like that. We would have conversations, and they would tell me, my parents just let me do whatever I want, and stuff like that. Or my parents gave me this. My parents never gave me certain things, right? And it was that stuff that started to play a role.
Yeah.
Because when you're going to school, and I went to school in Maplewood, right? So you're surrounded by all types of families and kids. So the thing is that there are things that I should have gotten that I didn't get. And I would see other kids have them, so I would try to figure out how I'm gonna get them.
Yeah.
So when I got to high school, I got a job, started figuring out and that's when I also started to figure out that I can just do things on my own.
Got it.
And I really don't need my parents. So there was this growing resentment
Yeah.
that was growing in me, and I moved out at 21 and never went back.
Yeah.
But my parents and I have great relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I educate them on what some of those things that they've done that they shouldn't have done, and they've accepted it, and they understand it. But they also understand. I also had to learn that it's not their fault,
Right.
Because that's all they knew.
Right. And I think that's what's important is parents aren't intentionally trying to mess up their kid or cause
My parents
mental health
weren't.
stuff. No,
Yeah.
most aren't.
Yeah.
It's they're trying to do either what they've learned, right, and they attribute it to their own upbringings, and this is what I was taught, so this is what I'm going to do. It's not always the healthiest thing, right, but that's just what they know. And they're just trying to do their best. Was there a difference with you being a boy? Did you have any sisters? You have sisters?
2 sisters.
So was there a difference in how they treated your sisters versus how they treated the boys? Any types of things that were said to you guys as boys versus
So
as
it
girls?
wasn't based on gender; it was based on the child.
Ah.
Yeah. So my older sister got everything she wanted. If we went shopping for shoes, we love shoes. If we went shopping for shoes, my older sister would get at least 4 pairs. 4 to 5, however many she wanted.
Yeah.
My second sister was more humble with it, and she just, she got too cool. She wasn't really worried about it. This is when the issue started to become, when I started to recognize certain things, is that every year before school started, we'd go school shopping, and my brother would get the best sneakers, and I would get what I felt wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, I wanted Jordans and all that stuff. My other brother wasn't getting those either, but he got something close to it.
Okay.
Right? And I'll never forget this one year. My brother got these Gary Paytons. And
No idea what those are.
Yeah. They were sneakers that, I knew other kids were going to have on too, right? And I ended up getting New Balances. Because why? That summer I got in trouble. But at the end of the day, I knew what it did to me.
Yeah.
Right? But nobody ever knew, and I never said anything.
Yeah.
I just kept,
Right.
moving along. And then when I got older, I got a job and be able to do certain things. But my parents thought that if they kept certain things from me or they didn't allow me to go through certain or have certain experiences, it would correct my behavior.
Yeah.
Nah, it just really just made me hate being home more
Right.
and not wanting to be there, not wanting to be a part of that family.
Yeah.
So
And is that something then kind of transitioning to the work you do now and the stuff that you see now and the boys that you work with? Do you see that? Do you see that it's your boys are having a hard time wanting to, talk with their parents, be at home because of maybe whatever the child rearing behaviors are?
Yeah, you're gonna get that in most boys, right? But the boys we have in the program are interesting. So they are. I tell people all the time we have 21 different problems, right? So these boys, I love them to death.
Yeah.
But I also know they all come with different circumstances to a situation. So I have young men who are in the program who will never have to worry about what they're gonna eat at night.
Right.
I have boys in the program who will have to worry about that. I have young men who are probably going to end up at Princeton, and I have boys who are probably going to start off at a community college first.
Right.
Perfectly fine.
Right.
But the one thing that is consistent is that they don't have safe spaces at home to be able to communicate certain things. And when they come to the academy, they have that space.
Yeah.
They say everything. They let loose.
Yeah.
They say whatever because they know from day one thing I've always said is that everything that happens here stays here.
Yeah.
Unless it's something detrimental to your life that I know that can cause issues,
Right.
we're going to have a conversation outside of this. But
Right.
at the end of the day, anything that you guys share here stays here, and we're going to make sure of that. And they believed in it,
Yeah.
and that was what was important to us.
Yeah.
So when they come, we noticed, one of the first things we noticed last September was that some of them didn't know how to express if they had issues, right? They just knew that, okay, I have an issue, and then as long as I move on in life, it'll be okay.
fine, yeah.
But not understanding that issue that you currently have an issue with right now, that's currently festering right now, would, if it may disappear for a while,
Yeah.
but might come back later.
Right.
So having them understand it's important to address it, immediately address it,
Yeah.
or seek help right? How to seek help. A lot of times boys don't know how to seek help.
Yeah.
They don't know how to be resourceful.
Yeah.
I know I didn't learn how to be resourceful until I got to college.
Yeah.
Right? Learn how to tap into different things and meet new people, networks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So trying to teach our boys that now so that when that time comes and they have to navigate that space, that's not a foreign thing for them.
Because I think it's kind of ties into that toxic masculinity, right, and stuff like that. And
Big time.
you don't ask for help. If you need to, if something's wrong, you figure it out, right? That's kind of like what people tell a lot of young boys as they're growing up. Like, if you figure it out, you're be a man. Like, you can do it.
Right, especially if you come from a foreign background. Yeah. It's like, if something happens and you start crying, they find a way to make you stop crying. They're like, you don't need to cry. It's not that. They probably won't say it's not that serious, but how they make it seem like it's not that serious. Right. But that's affecting you, right? So we want to make sure that that's not the case. Yeah. So that's why we are involved in their lives, in all facets of their lives. We are involved in their lives academically, socially. Yeah. If something happens at home and their mom and dad are having issues in terms of how to address it, they know that they can call us, right? If one of our boys get in trouble at 2:00 in the morning, they have the parents have my number. They can call me. We got legal representation because we want to make sure that our boys are prepared and never in a situation where they're being taken advantage of. Yeah. Because we know that takes place, right? Yeah. So allowing ourselves to be available and have those things ready for the boys is important. Yeah. Right.
When it comes to their mental health, and I know you touched on it, like that they have a hard time expressing themselves, but like, what are some of the other mental health challenges that you're seeing within?
Oh man, so when they go to, so some of our boys go to like predominantly white schools, right? And they'll hear racist comments made, and they know they can't react because their parents have told them, don't get in trouble in school, because what they constitute as trouble is them if they defend themselves and then they get suspended for defending themselves, then that's them getting in trouble. Right. So a lot of times our boys just turn a blind eye to it. So when they come, they'll express, "Oh, I heard this today. This was said to me, but I couldn't really say anything because I didn't want to say anything." We got some boys who have anger issues, right? So there's this thing where I know what's being done to me is wrong, but I can't say anything because I know that I could, one, either end up getting in trouble, two, when I get home, I'm going to have to deal with something else. Right? So it's now we're now having to educate not only them, but also their parents about what's wrong and what's not, right? And what are some of the things that we need to make sure that we're looking out for so that they're not having to go through these different experiences. Right.
It's a challenge, right? I grew up as well in like predominantly white schools, and you are struggling with like your identity, right? Being a black person, you don't really have many people that look like you, and then you're getting told, well, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, and you're just like, well, how can I express myself? How can I be who I am?
One of the things that's interesting is that two of the young men that's in our program right now actually go to the same high school that I went to. Oh, okay. And when they tell me some of the things that happened, I believe it because I remember it. Yeah. People ask me all the time about I never come back to the school. I'm like, for what? When I was there, it felt like a prison sentence. Yeah. High school is 4 years. I got suspended at least two or three times a year when I was in high school, every year. Wow. Except for senior year when I only got suspended once, and that was in November. Reason being is because when I walked into the senior year that year, I said my goal was to not get suspended at all. And when I did get suspended that year, I cried because it was tough on me because I was like, I was really trying my best not to get. And what did I get suspended for? I now know I've recounted every single thing I got suspended for. Yeah. And the thing I got suspended for senior year was a food fight that they said I started. Right? Where that's why one of the things that we do is that restorative justice. Our boys get in trouble when they're with us, but we want to make sure that we give them a chance to learn from that. Right. And that's not the case in these schools. Right. What's going on is that, okay, you get in trouble, guess what? We're going to penalize you. We're going to find a way to separate you. Yeah. And you keep that young man out of school, half of them don't even want to be in school, right? And then what about those who really do want to be in school? Me, I wanted to be in school, but because I knew that when I was in school, it gave me a chance to be away from home. Yeah. So those like 6 hours of the day, I was like, I was good, I was free. Yeah. But I also had a behavioral issue, so so a lot of times that's one of the things that I know is that when they're in school, they're not feeling like they can't really feel like who they really want to be. Yeah. Yeah. Because of what they're doing in the schools in which they go to, too. And
I don't think a lot is taken to really educate boys on on their feelings, on their emotions, on their experiences, right? Because we just see the outward display. Oh, you're angry. Oh, you're frustrated, suspension, consequence, et cetera, et cetera. But how often are we taking the time to take a step back and say, like, well, what is causing that manifestation of this behavior?
The only time those conversations start is when something dramatic happens. When something drastic has happened, so now we got to start asking these necessary questions that we should have been asking a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we all know when if it's one of our black boys who do something, it gets magnified, right? And it gets magnified in a way where, well, it's probably it come from a certain home, but then when the white boy does something, it's totally different, right? And that happens at the school district in which we went to, that I went to, and that these two young men who were in our program go to, and they complain about it all the time. They're going to be seniors this year, so for them, they're just trying to get out.
Yeah.
But why does high school have to be that?
Yeah.
Right. And I think when if there was ever really a real conversation being had about the different mental health areas that the kids have to go through, especially boys, a lot of things would be exposed.
Yeah.
But they don't want to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Those conversations don't want to be had because if they know that they would then now know, well, here's what we've been doing that's causing this issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that a couple of weeks ago, the Escame School District, South Orange, Maple and South Orange, ended up after years of litigation, finally, they're having to pay up for the fact that there's been so much racial injustice that's taking place.
Discrimination
in
stuff.
Discrimination,
I saw that.
And I remember from when I was there in 2003,
Yeah.
right? From 1999 to 2003, where they tried to keep some of us down and try to make sure that we weren't. If we were considered troublemakers, they separate us.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So,
without doing the work of like what's going on, what's happening. Right?
Nobody wanted to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to ask the right questions.
And I'm curious though, how that also shows up though in the other side, right? Where we're in predominantly black schools. And I think sometimes what happens is we tend to use our experiences and then generalize it, right? And think, well, this is what I went through, so this is what you should go through, right? And you're trying to be, a teacher or an administrator or whatever, but what it ends up doing, I think, inadvertently is like causing more of an issue, right? Because you're just like, well, when I grew up or the schools that I went to, this is what happened, so this is how I'm going to, treat you guys, this is the culture we're going to set, et cetera, but it's still not allowing that space, as you talked about like talking, right? Providing the space for them to just learn how to talk about what happened, talk about their emotions.
Well, before you can even talk, you got to make the comfortable space, right? And there's no comfortable space being made. Because if I come to you, as a black boy, I come to you and I say, well, this is what I want to do. Senior year, and I say, well, I want to go to a junior college so I can play football, right? And then that will also help me save money as well. But then you turn around and say, well, I think you should consider this.
Yeah.
You just negated completely everything I just said, right? Because what I say don't matter.
Right.
And I think that stuff plays a role, and I think black boys know those conversations are gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's how the conversation is gonna turn. So they tend not to even go that route.
Right.
With it, with how they really feel.
Yeah.
So if you're not creating a space where they feel comfortable and they feel like, okay, I can say this, I can express my feelings this way, and I could probably, and then the result that I'll probably get back will be a positive one. Then what you're going to get is an atmosphere where nobody ever wants to speak up.
Right. And it takes time. I think there's also patience in that, right? Sometimes people are like, oh, I created a space and I tried it once and then like it didn't happen, or this is the kind of the result. It's like, well,
yeah, you can't just create a space. You got to create. There's a rapport that needs to be built.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people who don't come from those backgrounds don't understand about that rapport,
right,
and don't know how to create that rapport to begin with. They just think, oh, as long as I'm nice to this kid, he should be nice back, or he should be willing. No, you don't know what this young man has gone through.
Yeah,
you don't know what this black youth has gone through.
Right.
So let's make sure we understand. First, let's make sure we understand what's the school that we work in.
Yeah.
What's the demographic in which we serve first, before, because a lot of times things are just a paycheck for certain people. So.
Yeah, and there's the theories of, well, the only way they'll listen is if I yell at them. The only way they'll listen is if I do that.
Yeah, they can yell all they want.
Yeah.
But you're gonna get a non-responsive.
Yeah.
Non-responsive. you'll either get a non-responsive or you'll get one who's gonna be like, you're not gonna talk to me like that.
Right. Right. Or they respond and like they may do what you want to do, but you're not teaching them anything, right? No. They're going to do the same thing again the next day and the same thing again the next day, right? Right. And there's not a space for them to feel heard. So me being in the schools, that's what I get often is like the reason I responded that way is because I felt disrespected by the teacher, right? And I tried to, stand up for myself, and I was being told I was being disrespectful. I can't talk back or whatever. So then we're teaching them that their voices don't matter, right? And that's already a challenge when it comes to boys in terms of being able to feel comfortable, like expressing their emotions with their voice, right? Not through other, means. It can be very hard when you feel silenced by people who are supposed to be helping you grow and develop your voice. Yeah. Have you seen that kind of similarly with the boys that you work with?
Yeah, I see everything with these boys. It's crazy. You want them to have that understanding, and then you'll see the acceptance, right? It's a two-step process. Once they get the understanding, they'll have the acceptance, and you give them the opportunity. You have to give them an opportunity to mess up. Yeah. And if you don't give them that opportunity, if everything is you have to be this, you have to be that, right. Now here comes the pressure. Here comes that pressure. And that was one of the things that I know I dealt with was there was this constant pressure in my house, right? So then when I got to school, it was like, well, it was different because there was no pressure at school. It was like, well, if he makes it, he makes it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Yeah. I remember I got my SAT scores, and I had gotten a 1,200 out of 1,600, right? And they were like, teachers were trying to figure out, well, how did he get that score? Yeah. And the reason I know that's because the one lady, Ms. Brown, who made sure I knew everything that was being said, right? She was like my math teacher. She said, there are people here who don't believe that's really your score. And I remember what that did to me. Yeah. It was tough, right? Yeah. Because there's no believer, right? And that's why at the academy, we want to make sure that people understand that Black boys need believers, right? And that's why it's important. Right. People always want to know, well, what does that mean? We'll have the shirt on, or somebody will have the shirt on, they'll walk around and they'll say, well, what does Black boys need believers? Yeah. And then you start breaking it down, right? People automatically think it has to do with like systematic racism and stuff. No, it's just the fact that when you see a Black boy, what do you see? Right. What is the first thing that comes to mind, right? What is the belief you have? My belief is that every Black boy deserves an opportunity to be successful, right? Deserves an opportunity to smile, right? And deserves an opportunity to breathe, right? So it's all that stuff, but it's a lot of layers, like we say, right? And we want to make sure that we gotta start understanding the layers first before we can even address a lot of the stuff that's taking place.
So then, where do we start, right? When it comes to our boys, where do we start? When do we start, right? I'm always a proponent of like the younger the better, right? But is it the home? Is it school? Is it all of the above? More services? Like
sadly enough, we're gonna always still have issues, right? But how do we move forward? It starts in the house. Yeah. It starts in the house. So I have my son, Braxton, right? I love that little guy.
I love that name.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we give him an aggressive name. So Braxton, I probably say I love you to him at least 50 times a day.
Oh. How old is he?
He's 2. Okay. Right, turning 3 in September. But that's not, because I know that's what I didn't get. Yeah. My father was there for me financially, right? But he was never there for me emotionally. Yeah. Right? And for my son, I wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. So I try to always make sure that he gets that opportunity to understand that he's being loved. Yeah. Same thing goes for my daughter, right? And that's what I mean when it starts at home. You start to breathe that into your child at a very early age, and then they believe it. So then they know what they deserve when they get older, as they mature and as they become the people in which you thrive for them to become. Yeah. So then when they get to school, it's almost like they can speak up for themselves, and they can say certain things, and they can identify what they deserve. Yeah. But it really starts at home first, right? But then as life moves on for them, it becomes almost automatic because they know it. They're like, okay, well, because I grew up a certain way, because my parents told me certain things, I come to expect it, right? And they now know how to ask for it. Yeah. It's the asking part that eventually you're either gonna know how to do it or you're not gonna know how to do it.
Right. And it's you're right. And it's what happens is like when you teach them from such a young age and then they go to like pre-K, kindergarten, whatever, and then they're in spaces where that isn't encouraged, right? Then it's challenging.
You better take your child out of school.
Right?
It's really that simple. You take them out, right?
Yeah.
But that's also for you to be paying attention. So before a lot of people don't realize that before the academy, I was a college administrator and a professor for like 10 years, right? And I remember the craziest question that I would get every August when the kids are being moved in is parents would ask you, well, how do you think my child's going to do? I'm like, what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
You had 18 years to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right? And I wasn't trying to be mean or rude, but I really need you to understand that you have 18 years to before your child goes off to be able to do things on their own.
Yeah.
That's ample time for you to figure out, is my child even ready to be at a college campus somewhere? Right? Is my child going to be academically successful? And you had 18 years to notice certain habits. Right. If your child wasn't studying late at night, trying to make sure, thriving to get certain grades, okay, my child might not be the space. So how do we alleviate certain issues from arising? Right. Is making sure we ask the necessary questions and we pay attention. So it really starts in the parents. So when I said that, sadly enough, that we're going to still have issues because not every young man or young girl is going to have a parent. Right? Or somebody there who's going to believe in them. Yeah. And that's where we run it, and that's where we're going to always fall short. Yeah. Is that somebody's going to eventually get left behind. Yeah. But for the masses, we just have to make sure that we start from the beginning.
Yeah. And it's this interconnected approach, right? Once we got the parents going, we got the school going.
Once you get the parents going, once you get the parents going, you got the teachers going because the parents are going to hold the teachers accountable. Yeah. Right? I can't wait till my kids get to like first grade, right? They're pre-K now, and I'm looking at them like, man, I can't really hold you teachers accountable. I can't really like tell them about themselves. Yeah. But but when they get to like first grade, second grade, all that, man, listen, they better be making sure that they getting that money's worth, because we're gonna do everything in our power to make sure that they get what they need. Right. And when your children see stuff like that, when the school sees that, okay, these are parents that are truly invested, they're stakeholders, things tend to be a little different. Yeah. But we now have an opportunity to be able to change that too. Yeah. Where they're not going to just look at you or you're just another black family. Yeah. Right. I think starting in this September, depending on how we get back to school, we have an opportunity our kids have an opportunity to really like become stakeholders themselves and say, well, if I'm not being taught this, I don't want to be taught this at all. Yeah. Right? If we're going to spend 6 months learning about the Holocaust and we only spend 2 days learning about Black history, what's up? Right? So, and then kids have that, and that's what I know for me as a parent, I want to make sure that my kids understand that. Understand what they're teaching you. Understand what they're not teaching you. Yeah. Right? And stuff like that. But it's allowing your child to really find out what they deserve. And once you're able to do that, I think a lot of things would be different. But if we're just passing through and and saying, okay, we're just getting through the days, you're gonna run into some issues.
Yeah, yeah. So what suggestions then would you have for anybody when it comes to the student mental health space for young Black boys? Like, what should be happening? What should they be doing? What needs to stop? What needs to start? I know you mentioned some of it already, but like, what if you kind of had to summarize it, make it succinct? Like, what are some suggestions? 2, 3, 4, whatever.
The first thing I would suggest is let therapy be like a normal thing. Oh yeah. All right. No, for real. Let it be a normal thing. So I know I want to make sure that my son knows the word therapy. Right. Right. At a very early age. Right. Or as early as he can know about it. Because life is not always going to be perfect. There are going to be things that's going to happen that you're going to have to be able to get through. Yeah. And I think a lot of times parents need to be able to do that. They need to be able to say, okay, you know what? I don't have all the answers. Let me see if I can find somebody. And find somebody who is culturally competent enough to be able to have that conversation with your child. So I think with Black boys is that when they go through certain things, don't just say, okay, they'll get through it. That stuff that whole ideology, or they'll just get through it, doesn't, because it really just it stays inside you. Yeah. You could be sitting in class and something would trigger a word or something that you're learning about would trigger it, and then it comes back. Right. Everything that I know I've gone through when I was a child has came back some way. Yeah. It has gotten triggered.
Yeah. And it's also like we're interesting people like just, they'll figure out how to get over it. And it's like, but how? Like, how are they? No one's teaching them.
Nobody's teaching them. How the schools aren't teaching them. The parents aren't teaching them. Yeah. So how are they supposed to learn that, right?
And unfortunately, what they do is they end up resorting now to unhealthy coping. Yeah. Well, you told me to figure it out, so I resorted to
just ignore it. As long as I don't put myself in no position to ever have to deal with it ever again, then I'm okay.
Right. And sometimes that ends up being, alcohol, drugs, like just other unhealthy things that because, I had nothing else to turn to. You told me to figure it out. I figured out the best way that I knew, or based on my experience and things that I've seen and stuff like that.
The second thing I would say is that create a culture of being able to journal, right? Give your boys an opportunity, because some boys don't know how to. They have a hard time expressing themselves or don't know how to articulate certain things, but they can write it down, and then through that writing it down, you read it, and if they share it with you. But if once you open up that dialogue, it'll come automatically. Yeah, they're gonna want to share it with you, especially if you build that relationship with your child. Yeah. And then with the journaling, what also comes is that conversation comes, because they're gonna read something and may be disturbing. Yeah. It may not, but it allows you to have conversation. Yeah. Right. But you still was able to get him to come out with it. And then the third thing I would say would be your parents having an understanding that they can't do it by themselves, right? And getting help, right? Making sure that your child has somebody else that they can reach out to, rather than you always thinking, oh, well, I don't want nobody to know my business and stuff. That having that mentality will allow you to be in situations where you don't want to be. Yeah. So I think if we put ourselves in a position to be vulnerable, we're gonna be okay. Yeah. Right? We're gonna be okay, and that's one of our core competencies, right? Is vulnerability. We wanted our boys to understand the importance of being able to speak their minds. Yeah. Or when something is wrong, learn how to be able to open up your mouth and say something. Yeah. Because that's courage, right? That's what courage is, right? Yeah. We want boys to be strong and to take risks and that's what vulnerability is. Like you're taking this risk because you don't know what the outcome's going to be. I'm going to open up and pour my heart out, and I don't know how you're going to take that, but I'm choosing to be vulnerable. I'm choosing to take that risk, right? So sometimes we say the words, but then when it comes down to certain aspects of what it means, then we shy away. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, so that stuff. I would say those are the three things. Yeah. That my recommendations would be when it comes to black boys is giving them an opportunity, but finding creative ways to give them an opportunity. Yeah. Like I said, the journaling I think has been a huge component for us at the academy, because all the boys have a journal. Yeah. 2 or 3 of them, right? And every time they don't come with it, I'm like, oh, here's a new one. Right. You got and then while your homeboy over there who has the one that we gave from day one, you now have to start over. Yeah. Right. So, but they are learning the importance of being able to write things down.
It's such a powerful tool. Yeah. And it doesn't require much, right? A pen and a paper, right? But we live so much in our heads, and it can get very overwhelming, very confusing. Just seeing things on paper, getting it out and putting it on paper, and then you get to see it, right? Sometimes you can make more sense of it. But you're right. A lot of the students that I've worked with, where they come to me and they're upset about something, or they're nervous to actually have the words come out of their mouth, I say, well, do you want to write it down? And almost always they're like, yes, I'd rather do that. And they just push the paper to me and I can read it, but they're not comfortable with the words yet to come out of their mouth, but they want help, right?
Yeah, because they don't know how to articulate. So, and I think a lot of times boys don't have a hard time articulating themselves, especially when they get to college. That's when you really see it, right? And a lot of times, I think it's because the person in which they're dealing with, as the professor or as the administrator, the immediate supervisor in which they have to deal with on that campus, doesn't have this one thing that's needed, which is called intellectual humility, right? You think because you have a master's degree, you have a doctorate degree, you can talk to these kids however you want. Nah, it don't work like that. Yeah. It will never work like that. And you have kids now who will tell you about yourself, right? But once if you can have intellectual humility, you can have a lot of success, and that's how you build a rapport. I didn't like the boys know I'm successful. They know I've been academically successful, but I don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't even know I was getting a doctorate degree. They found out through social media, right? And they congratulated me and all that good stuff. But I talk to them like they're human beings.
Right.
So I'm the big brother, right? For some of them, I'm a dad, right? And I love the responsibilities in which I have that comes with it. But at the end of the day, I know that my relationships are successful with them because I have the willingness to be able to have conversation with them at their level, and I'm not belittling them and making them think, oh, because you haven't gone through this much experiences, you don't know nothing. No, because you've gone through stuff that I haven't gone through yet, right? And I'm 35, you only 17, but you've seen some stuff that I haven't seen yet.
Exactly.
So teaching them how to have that understanding, and I know one of the things that I always say to them is you need two things to be successful in life, right? The first word is communication. You have to be able to communicate people. Once you can do that, you'll be fine. And the second thing is relate. You have to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. If you can do that, a lot of things will be easy for you, right? And you can alleviate yourself from ever ending up in certain situations. Those are two things that we make sure that the boys understand, is that communication and relation. And I think that's what allows them to see, okay, this brother's going to, like, understand me, right? Or this person's going to understand me because they know what I've gone through. And if they don't know, they're willing to listen or accept what I've gone through and give me ways to get around it.
So talk to us more about, like, the work that you do, right? Dig in, brag about it, let us know, like, all the really cool things that you have going on with the Academy.
So we have a couple of initiatives that we do, programs and initiatives. So the first one is Mental Health Plus Black Boys, right? And this May was supposed to be the first one. And of course, with everything that's going on, coronavirus, we couldn't do it. But the goal is to be able to bring this conversation to the community so that the community knows, okay, our black boys are dying at a higher rate than the white boy because of all these things. And why is it that the white boy is the black boy dying more faster than the black boy when it comes to suicide? The reason being is because when our black boys have issues, they don't have ways to being able to get that stuff addressed, right? Whereas the white boy, they have issues, mom and dad probably know somebody, get it done. So teaching that networking in our communities, that it's important so that our parents understand that. But how do you do that? We were gonna have this huge symposium where we're gonna have people such as you, right, on the panel, right, and different workshops going on throughout the day, which will allow the parents to see this thing. And so moving forward, we're gonna keep doing it, and the goal is to have it next year. And that is not something that you can do virtually. I know everybody says, "Oh, let's do it virtually." Nah. I'm not doing that virtually because the impact that needs to be had, you can only see it and you can only feel it if it's face to face. So I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait. The second thing is the Women's Worth One-on-One project. So the Women's Worth One-on-One project was important to us because we wanted to make sure our boys understood the importance of being able to have effective relationships and communications with women, especially black women. And, all the conversation that's going on today with the women feeling unprotected. So we had already started this work because I had already identified this was something that needed to be done. So the boys love it. Why? Because, they like girls. But they also get to expose a lot of things that they thought was okay. And then we got to fix it now, right? So we give them that opportunity to be able to do it. And we kind of partner up with different organizations, female organizations. So Butterfly Dreams, one that's based in Newark, is one that we're going to be doing it with in the future. And it's important. It's important work. A lot of people have mentorship programs or I don't really say we have a mentorship program. What I say we have is a transformational academy, right? Because the goal is to be able to transform these boys into the people they want to really be and who we know that they can be. And the only way we can be able to do that is have real life conversations. That's why on our logo you'll see it says real people, real life, real impact. Because it's important to understand that you are real people. and this is real life, and the impact in which you're gonna have is real.
Right.
So, in the 365 real model is something that we want our boys to understand. They need to strive to be good people 365 days a year.
Right.
So, it's all that stuff that encompasses that.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, we have the community projects that we do in the community as well, that we have going on, because servitude is an important thing for our boys, so that they understand that. Being able to give back and understanding that they may not have enough, but they may not think they have enough, but when they see somebody who doesn't have anything, so gratitude is something that we want our boys to understand. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff that
you do in December. You do like
so in December is the gala. And so we don't operate in the months of December and June.
Okay.
Why? Because December is too much going on with that gala.
Yeah.
The boys are there that night, and the reason I wanted the boys to be there is because I want the boys to see that people believe in them. This is a room filled with believers, and black boys, right? Because nobody's coming out in December, in a cold December night, dressed up in heels, right? Because it's a black tie affair, and it allows people to be in this space and to see the movement and what it is that we're trying to do. But then the boys see that, okay, these people believe in us. They're here, they're spending their money on us and stuff, right? So it's important for them to be there, and they're dressed up too, right? So, and I wanted the boys to be able to get that experience. Because a lot of times, the only time they get to dress up is when they go to church or they're going to a funeral and stuff like that. Nah, let's give you some new experiences. Right. So they thrive in those type of spaces. Come to find out, right? Because they made us a lot of money.
Yeah, they feel good about themselves.
They feel good.
Yeah.
When you feel good, when you look good, you feel good, right? Yeah. And you operate differently. So I know what it takes to get the boys to the level in which they need to be at to be successful. Yeah. And I think that was a huge momentum for us that night, and we're looking to hopefully have it again in December. Yeah. Thank God for our Governor Murphy, who's doing an awesome job, right? Making sure that we stay in the green. Yeah. So the goal is to be able to have it in December and do it again. But it's a lot of stuff. Yeah. In the fall, probably more so later in the fall, we're looking to potentially start a movement where we're going into white neighborhoods, right? Predominantly white neighborhoods, and having conversations with them about police brutality, right? Racism and stuff. Because I think a lot of times people are asking us or what can we do differently, especially our white counterparts. Yeah. After the George Floyd thing, I got so many text messages, emails about what can I do not to offend the black community. Yeah. I said, first off, at first I was like, okay, I don't want to be the one having this. But then I realized my responsibility too. Yeah. Right? Is if the only way this stuff is going to change is if I'm willing to hear them out, because they may not even know this little subtle thing that you did caused issues for me. Right? So being able to have those conversations, and it's going to be like a whole initiative that we want, and we want the boys to be there too, so that people see the faces in which that these things that's happening in our communities are affecting the most, right? As a black man in America, I've been through some things that I would never want anybody to go through, and I know it's been at the hands of certain people. So I wanted to make sure that I did my part in terms of being able to educate. If you're gonna ask, just know the conversation is going to be uncomfortable, but it's a much needed conversation, and I'm happy you're asking, and let's have the conversation. And I think that's what our responsibility is our willingness to be able to have the conversation, and not just running away from it because we don't feel like we have responsibility to educate people. Yeah. If you want this stuff to stop, guess what? We got to educate. Yep. So.
And logistically, so what age boys are they? When do they start? How long are they in the program for?
So our boys are in the program from between the ages 12 to 18.
12 to 18.
They are in the program for the duration of
12 to 18.
12 to 18. So we just graduated our first young man from high school, right? But so he's going, and I'm going to tell you a story about this young man, right? He had the potential and all the credentials to go off to a four-year university in September, but decided that he didn't want to do that. What he decided to do was to go to a 2-year first. He knows that his mom and dad don't make much money. Why put that burden on them? And for a young man of his age to come up with that kind of mindset, he's only destined to be successful, right? So he's gonna go to start off at Union County College first, right? Stay 2 years there, and then he's gonna go down to North Carolina A&T.
Oh,
That's where he wants to go to an HBCU.
Yeah.
And I'm all for the HBCUs. What we'll do is we'll stay with him for the first 2 years of college, so that he transitions well, he understands certain things, and by the time, from all my years of being in higher ed, the one thing I knew is that if you can get to your sophomore year, you're gonna graduate.
Yeah.
If you get to the end of your sophomore year, you're gonna graduate.
Right.
Nothing's gonna stop
That transition period is like extremely
barring any unforeseen circumstances, drastic circumstances, you're gonna graduate.
Right.
So the goal is to be to get them through the first 2 years, and then they'll be fine. But how do we do that? We do that basically by setting them up with a coach. And what that coach does is be able to forge relationships with them. And it could be a coach that's in the arena in terms of like what they want to do, career-wise, or it could just be somebody who just says, okay, they have to go through a training with us. We're not just letting anybody be. Nah, because I think a lot of times people just hear the idea, I want a mentor. No, it don't work like that.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, we don't even use the word mentor. We use coaching, right? So he'll be with us. Ironically for him, I'm the first coach, right? So I'll be his coach for the first 2 years, get him through college, the first 2 years of college, and then we'll move him down to wherever. If he'll get into North Carolina A&T, we'll be there for the process. I mean, like driving him down there and everything. Yeah. Like when we say we're involved, we're involved.
You're involved,
right? Yeah. So and then so we'll do that, and then. And then he becomes an alumni of the program. He gets his gold jacket. Yeah. He gets a gold jacket, just like in the Hall of Fame, right? Aww. He gets a gold jacket. Because right now they all have black jackets.
Yeah.
But he'll get his gold jacket, and then he'll become an alumni. And then the goal is to be able to grow this thing to a point where we got so many people who have gone through it, and it becomes ultimately a school. Yeah. Right? So that's the goal, is to be able to have a school for black boys that they get the pedagogy of what black boys need to be successful. So we're observing a lot of different people who's doing it. I know we're observing the Ron Brown School in D.C. who's doing their work. The Eagle Academy in New York. Okay. Right? We're watching how they do certain things, because when it's time for us to do ours, we want to make sure that we do it the right way. Yeah. And wherever there was a hole, we're going to fill it, right? And stuff like that.
Figure those gaps. All right. So how can people stay engaged? How can they find you? How can they support you? What do you need?
They can definitely find us on Instagram, right? And Twitter and Facebook. On Instagram, it's the Academy 365 Inc. INC. On Twitter, it's the same thing. It's just the Academy. And then on Facebook, it's the Academy Inc. And you just follow us. And you can definitely donate as well. Like we accept all donations. We're not one of those organizations that needs a certain amount. No, because for us, every dollar counts, right? Especially in these beginning stages. But ultimately, it's to be able to be in a position a couple years from now where we can offer this up to every boy that comes our way. Yeah. Right now we only have 21. So what we're doing is as we graduate one, we'll replace one. Yeah. Next year we graduate 5. Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, we graduate 5, and we'll bring in 5 new boys, right? Yeah. And that's the ultimate goal right there. So, but by the time we get everybody out, the founders, right? Founding boys, we'll get them out. We would have a whole new set of boys that's come in. So we want to make sure that's the case. But this stuff costs money. It's a lot of work, and we need the economical space to be able to do it, right? So donations are definitely welcomed. Yeah. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of the Ultimate Guide to Student Mental Health, as we talked about boys and their mental health space. And I'm excited for what's to come.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Of course.